What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. I was thinking back and reading through some of your great comments on the last video we put out about how the United States is not going to win World War III. And I got some great comments. Quite a few of you just had outstanding things to say about it, and only a few naysayers, and so it was pretty good. But as I was thinking back on the content that I put out last time, I realized that it was a real severe black pill moment. I didn't really paint a lot of positive pictures or even have any answers of how you could get out of this sort of a situation that we're facing with World War III being imminent now, it seems. And the more and more information that's coming out through those leaked documents is just reaffirming what I said in the last video. Ukraine is losing the war, even though the mainstream media is telling you a different story altogether. They're saying Ukraine is winning, they're, valiant warriors and all this, and we had the Ghost of Kiev and all these other things, right, that were made up stories that we found out later on. Well, the thing that I failed to do in the last video was talk about what am I doing right now to try to stave off the Great Depression or, the collapse of society or World War III, the effects that will certainly reverberate around our society as a result of World War III transpiring and getting hotter and hotter and hotter every day. So I wanted to go over 4 things that myself and my wife are heavily concentrating on right now to try to get ahead of anything that might be coming, anything bad that may be coming our way. We want to be prepared for that, right? We're not going to live in fear or in paranoia all the time about it. In fact, I sleep quite well at night knowing that I have these things mostly worked out. So number one thing you want to do right now, while you still can, while the dollar still has some purchasing power, is to go out and stock up now. Even at today's increased prices, it's still cheaper and a lot less labor than going out and growing stuff in your own yard and things like that. Personally, myself, my wife and I, we've had a hard time, a lot of struggles with gardening, and it doesn't always yield the expected results. For the labor that we're putting in, we're not getting the yield that we expect. Now, we try to stay organic and we only use natural fertilizers. I'm sure if we poured some like triple 13 or something like that on there, things would probably go crazy, but we try not to do that because we realize that over a long period of time, that's bad for your soil and your environment and stuff. So we're trying to stay as organic as we can. That may be shooting us in the foot out of the gate, but we've struggled with that. It's a lot of work, especially when you get into the hotter summer months, and just the task of going out and watering and pulling weeds when it's July and it's just hotter than hell outside and you don't want to do it. It's super humid, and so it creates this situation where it's a lot easier to go buy the stuff. So that's what I recommend right now. For those of you especially that are just getting into prepping, you need to stock up and have a good stockpile in your pantry, under your spare bedroom beds, in your spare bedroom closets, whatever. Wherever you can squirrel this stuff away, you should be doing that. Now, you should primarily concentrate on things that you already use, things that you already can make into recipes for meals that you're going to use. That way your cans and your beans and other stuff like that will be in a rotation, and you won't have really old stuff going bad, because that's just a waste of money. You don't want to throw your money away. You want to use things or buy things that you're going to use and stock up on those things. Some things that you can never go wrong with are like your basic preservatives, like salt. So if you had just tons and tons of salt stored away in a dry, cool place where it wouldn't suck up the moisture from the surrounding atmosphere, that would be an excellent bartering item in the future post-collapse. So I'm not going to go into a bunch of depth on that. We've made standalone videos about things that I think you should actually stock up on. I'm just saying, as a general rule of thumb, you need to be stocking up as much as you possibly can right now while the dollar still has buying power. So, and it's a lot easier to do that, to just go out and spend your money on beans or whatever, things like that that will fill your belly, and canned goods and things that will last a really, really long time. So also, in addition to stocking up, I've also made standalone videos about this, so go check through our catalog if you want to see these. But water is going to be, that's a key component to life. So you need to have your water plan worked out. We're not going to focus on that. If you're in the city, you're you're fighting a losing battle right out of the gate because you're dependent on that city water supply. If you're on a well, you have a lot more options, but you need to have a place to get water, or if you can't get water, you should stock up on water as much as you possibly can. So number 2, backyard, livestock, and gardening. So even though I said all that stuff about gardening, we still do it every year because even though it's a lower yield than I'm expecting, it's still worth it. The stuff that you get out of the garden is the freshest produce you're probably ever going to eat in your life. And it's just better. I mean, when you grow homegrown tomatoes and peppers and things like that, corn even, we did a Three Sisters garden last year with some pretty good success. I was really impressed by the Three Sisters gardening technique. And we got quite a bit of corn, quite a bit of squash was the other thing that we put in there. And the third thing for the Three Sisters is beans. Now, our beans failed, but we didn't have the right variety to start with. So maybe we'll do better this year. The point is, experiment, do different things. Raised beds are not that hard to come up with on your own. So get into gardening and backyard livestock. We've got quail now. I haven't actually harvested any quail or any quail eggs because they're still too young, but that's part of our plan for the future, is to be able to produce our own meat and eggs in our backyard. We've got chickens. We've had those for years and years. A lot of people call chickens the gateway animal to get into livestock and stuff like that. So if you don't already have chickens, get some chickens. If you can't have roosters, learn about your regulations and codes and, HOA rules and things like that before you get heavily invested in this sort of stuff. But most people, especially in the suburbs, but many people even in the cities, can get away with quail because they're not too loud. You may hear them crowing a little bit here in the background, and you'll certainly hear my rooster before this video's over, I'm sure. But we've got a rooster and now 5 hens. We lost a hen a week or 2 ago, and that was tragic. We lost one of our roosters not too long after that. And so I'm paying really close attention, making sure we don't have any kind of bird flu or anything like that. I don't believe that's what it is. My birds are getting older, so I think it was just old age, and it's time for us to replace them because their egg laying has dropped off. So after about 3.5 or 4 years, the egg laying is going to drop off, and you're just not going to get as many. And then basically you're just providing an old folks home for old hens that aren't producing. So there's a point where you need to cull those and turn those into roasters. You'd put them in a stew pot or something all day long, and you could still eat them. So backyard livestock, it's going to be key. What can you get away with at your home? We have, as I said, quail, chickens, and rabbits. And we have harvested a couple of rabbits so far, and it's delicious. Way better than I was expecting. To describe it to you, it's kind of like a cross between chicken and pork, believe it or not. It's not as juicy and fatty as pork, but the texture is more like pork, and it has more of a pork color to it. So I'd say it's somewhere in between chicken and pork. It probably tastes a little bit more like chicken, but chews a little bit more like pork, if that makes any sense. But so far, everything we've cooked with rabbit has been delicious, and that's a source of meat that I can produce right here in my backyard. And so part of the reason I came up with this list, and I'm working on all these things, is something that really resonated with me, I don't know, a year or so ago when I was reading through stories about the Great Depression. People that went through the Great Depression and lived to tell the tale. Not everybody was as hard up as the people that were in the city were. You see all these pictures of, soup lines and things like this, and, homeless shelters and things, people just lining up to get stuff because they couldn't produce anything. But if you lived out in the country and you already had a homestead set up, many of those people almost didn't notice. I don't want to say they didn't notice because I'm sure there were people around them that were, a lot more hard up, and they were struggling to get things and stuff like this. But this one farmer that they interviewed, and I think the guy was in New Mexico or Arizona, so not necessarily a really great place as far as homesteading and stuff, because it's really dry down there. Anyway, he was talking to the reporter, and he was saying, yeah, we were just fine. We had everything already set up. We could feed our animals off the food we produced here on our property, so we had plenty. A lot of people in the city didn't have plenty. So let that be a lesson to you if you're living in the city or even in the suburbs really close to the edge of the city, and you don't have a very big yard. You're not going to be able to produce a whole lot. And you think about how much food you buy for your family every year and stuff like that. So It's a lot. It's a big job. When you have nothing and you're just starting out and you're just getting into this, it can seem like an insurmountable mountain you have to climb. But let me tell you, just like everything, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's how you get a stockpile of stuff like this. So let's move on to the next one. Backyard, just to finish that up though, backyard livestock and gardening is something you can do right now for very little money. Your coops and your hutches and things like that will cost you a little bit to get going, but by the time you figure out what you're going to yield, as far as rabbits especially, they produce a lot of offspring. So you're going to get a lot of meat potentially off of those rabbits. The investment is very small, minuscule compared to the output that you're going to get. And that's one of the reasons we've shifted over some of our garden area that we used to put plants in. Now we have rabbit hutches there because the rabbits are producing more food on the table than the vegetables that we're growing. So anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to the next one. This is a critical one. I've talked about it in many different prepping videos. It's a huge topic just by itself. In fact, I should make a standalone video about it one day. Maybe I will. But tools and mechanical knowledge and skills. So you see me, a lot of times when we're doing videos in this shop here, this is my smaller shop. It's kind of like a big toolbox, basically. I've got every corner of this building and also my other big shop building stuffed with tools, okay? Because tools that you're going to use, not tools that, just sit on the shelf, but tools you're going to use, like your basic hand tools, your screwdrivers, your pliers, your things like that you're going to have, your drills, your cordless drills, your impacts, all the bits and accoutrements that goes along with that, sockets, ratchets, extensions, everything you're going to need to do mechanical jobs and the knowledge to do those jobs is going to be critical in SHTF, no doubt about it. So I look at these tools, for one thing, I make a lot of money with these tools. So I need these in my life. That's one of those things that since I got out of high school, I've been collecting tools. And I'm 47 years old now, so that gives you an idea that every time I go to a yard sale, and I didn't buy everything brand new. Some of them were gifts, sets of wrenches that I got years ago as a gift because people knew I was into mechanical stuff. So ask for those things for Christmas or whatever. Instead of asking for something that will never provide you any value, ask for something that's going to give you the value of being able to repair your own things. It's super critical. And having that knowledge, even if you don't have it all in your brain, you could buy the books. You could buy different books on different cars and different pieces of equipment like generators and water wells and stuff like that, so that you'll know how to do this when the SHTF comes and there's no repairman to come. Or maybe you can't afford to pay the repairman anymore because it costs $2 trillion to have the repairman come out. Don't believe me? Look at Zimbabwe's currency. I don't know if they're still doing this or what, but at one time, they were printing out trillion-dollar bills in Zimbabwe. And that could very easily happen here in the United States of America, the way they're sending hundreds of billions of dollars all around the world and not repairing things here in the United States. So tools and mechanical stuff. So also along the same line, as far as your tools, you're going to need a complete set of outdoor gardening hand tools like, shovels, rakes, hose. Yeah, that's right. You're going to need hose, multiple hose. You're going to need and quality tools too. You don't want some BS that's going to break apart on you the first time you put a shovel in the ground or the first time you put your foot on it. So you're going to want good quality tools with hickory handles and, keep them out of the elements the best you can so they'll last you a long time, and treat them right. They'll treat you right. Axes, saws, just you name it. You're going to need all of these hand tools. The little hand drills and things that you might, if the power goes out forever, you might have to end up using these hand tools. So it's going to be a critical thing, planes and other things like that you may not be thinking about right now. If you see these at yard sales, pick them up now for cheap because they're of little value in this modern society where everything's power tools, right? So you can get this stuff, a lot of this stuff, for really cheap. So you don't have to buy it brand new. I suggest you go get stocked up on that. That's one of those things that's almost as important as stocking up on food and water. For me anyway, because I'm a mechanic and I know how to use those tools, and I advise you to do that. It's going to save you a lot of money. Even if the SHTF never does come, it's going to save you tons and tons of money, and I think it's fun. So check it out. Get into tools, get everything you're going to need. The last thing on my list here is an old Latin saying Sci vis pacem parabellum, or maybe it's vis. You know, I'm not a Latin expert or anything like that by any means, but sci vis pacem parabellum. What does it mean? It basically means, loosely translated, it means to secure peace, you must prepare for war. And so, guns, lots of guns. Knowledge of using those guns and working on those guns. At very least, you need to know how to clean them, disassemble them, and clean them fully. Every gun you have, you need to know how to work on it. If you've got optics and scopes and things like that, you need to know how to attach those things so they're not going to rattle loose when you're right in the middle of a firefight, because that would be horrible if suddenly your scope accuracy started going way off, and if you were in the middle of a firefight and someone else is shooting back at you with their scope, that doesn't go off. So knowing the little tricks and tips that you're going to need to operate firearms and stuff like that is going to be critical, and to know how to work on them and keep them clean and keep them shooting for you for the longest amount of time possible. You know, like little things like, some ammo, for example, can get a little bit wet and it won't hurt it. Other ammo can't get wet at all, or it will hurt it. Like, for example, the 22 rimfire round. If you've got a pocket of a pocket full of 22 rimfire, and suddenly, you're laying down in the mud and some muddy water gets inside of there, chances are a lot of those rounds are not going to fire anymore. So why am I telling you this? Well, that's just, you probably already know this if you've shot a lot of 22, but I had a magazine one time that had a little bit too much oil in it. I oiled it up to try to make it work better. It was one of those Hot Lips magazines, they called them, the clear plastic ones for the 1022, and it wasn't working right. And I thought, hey, I'll put a little oil in there, and it'll work like butter then, right? Well, no, it didn't. I mean, it did. The magazine started functioning like it was supposed to. The problem was that it got enough of the rounds wet that they were just misfires, duds. They wouldn't fire at all. So that blew my mind when that happened. I thought that rimfires had enough of a crimp on them that they would keep out the moisture, but they won't. So lesson learned. I don't know, who that'll help out in the future, but, certain rounds like that, you certainly don't want to get them wet. I think 5.56 and 308 and most of your other military rounds are a little bit better as far as, if you got them, temporarily wet or something like that, it probably wouldn't hurt them, at least not in the short term. But anyways, that's just things to think about, knowing how to do this stuff. And the last thing that I'm really, really concentrating on right now is reloading. I've done a little bit of reloading, like hand loading in the past. I do have a full reloading setup, and not really. I've got a few things that I still need to buy. And I don't even remember right now, like a case trimmer and a couple of other things like that. But I've got a lot of the stuff, but I don't have the accoutrements. I've got some powder, but not enough powder. I've got some brass. I've got a lot of brass, but I don't have any primers, or not very many primers. I don't have very many bullets, actual bullets. So those kinds of things I need to stock up on now for all of the calibers that I want to reload. I won't be reloading any 22 because that's just too expensive to do that, I guess. It is possible, but it's too expensive, at least for my taste. I won't be reloading any shotgun rounds because that's a different piece of equipment. But anything that I've got in 308, I've even got a 7.62 54R Russian Mosin Nagant, and certain brass, the USA made brass, you can reload those. So I'm going to be looking into that. I've got 9mm, 44 special, 38 special, several different calibers that I'm going to be 30-30, several different calibers that I'm going to be focusing on having all of the accoutrements, the dies, the presses, everything that I'm going to need, the books. One of the most important things is the books that you're going to need on reloading data and how much powder to put into that shell, because it can get really dangerous really quick if you don't know what you're doing and you just go to pouring, random amounts of powder into a shell. It can get really dangerous. So you have to know how many grains of powder and stuff like that. So anyway, I've been cleaning up this side of the bench where you guys are sitting right now in preparation to get my reloading setup going, because I think that's going to be a really big deal. If you have the ability to reload in the future, post-collapse, that's basically like having your own printing press, just like the Fed has right now. So instead of them just hitting, add another zero, that'll be you in there. Every time you pull that lever, you'll be making money. You'll be making assets. You'll be able to trade those things for other things. You'll be able to use that in a defensive sort of a way to protect your preps. So training and knowledge and know-how and all that stuff, get it while you can, guys, because one of these days they're going to flip that switch, and either you won't be able to see anything on the internet, or you certainly won't be able to see things and videos like this where I'm talking about, you know, preparing for war. That's how you secure peace, is you prepare for war, even in peace times. We're not in peace times. We're facing World War III. Two of the mightiest armies that we've ever faced at once. And then they're, right now, through the BRICS group and all this, they're getting out of the petrodollar. Lots of things are looking bad here in the good old USA. And we could sit here and point fingers all day long, this, that, and the other. I mean, we all know FJB is a major problem. He's part of the reason that the whole thing is coming down like it is. But it really goes back to Obama, who got a lot of this stuff, set a lot of this stuff into motion with his communist agenda to destroy the United States of America. You know, back when Obama was still president, I used to worry all the time that SHTF was coming right then, because the things that he was doing, death by 1,000 cuts all the time, every day, to destroy our country, I didn't think we were going to be able to endure past Obama. And I don't think the plan was to endure much past that. I think the plan was to bring Hillary in as a shadow president for Obama, and instead Trump came in and disrupted the entire situation, like a bull in a china shop situation. So anyway, guys, hopefully we make it to the next election and all hell doesn't break loose, but I'm not holding my breath. Instead, I'm doing these 4 things and I'm concentrating on them as much as I possibly can while the information is available for all of us for free. So anyway, if you like this video, hit me up in the comments. We'll talk more about it. Other things that you think maybe we need to stock up on that just won't be available post-collapse. Anyway, I always look forward to reading your comments. Appreciate you tuning in. As always, I stand for liberty to the bitter end. I hope you do too. We'll see you next time.